Donald Trump just took a wrecking ball to the mainstream media. They're losing it over what just went down. I mean, they effectively all just got fired. We get all the details on this breaking story. Caroline Leavitt, her first big outing, if you would, as press secretary, just really setting some new ground rules, shall we say. We're going to talk about that. Plus, I mean, literally getting fired. That would be one Jim Acosta out at CNN. We'll get into that. He apparently opted to leave rather than take the graveyard shift. And Letitia James is out with some new sound because you see she is now suing Trump yet again, if you can imagine. And this guy, he's like the new Steve Rogers. Well, he goes by a different name in the Marvel series. This is for none other than Captain America, which he was just quoted in Rome at a press conference for Disney to talk about this, big deal new movie, saying this.
For me, Captain America represents a lot of different things, and I don't think the term, America should be one of those representations. Like, it's about a man who keeps his word, who has honor, dignity, and integrity.
Which apparently, for that guy, Anthony Mackie, is not about America. Unbelievable. It is good to have you here. Make sure you subscribe, share, like, give me a thumbs up. Also, make a comment. Make sure you hit the bell for the alerts if you're just coming here today. This is really something, you guys. Caroline Leavitt putting the entire media establishment on notice. Donald Trump has just taken a wrecking ball to ABC, CBS, NBC, the New York Times, you name it. Establishment, legacy media is done. Podcasting, streaming, individual creators and influencers, they are all in. Watch.
And in keeping with this revolutionary media approach that President Trump deployed during the campaign, the Trump White House will speak to all media outlets and personalities, not just the legacy media who are seated in this room. Because according to recent polling from Gallup, Americans' trust in mass media has fallen to a record low. Millions of Americans, especially young people, have turned from traditional television outlets and newspapers to consume their news from podcasts, blogs, social media, and other independent outlets. It's essential to our team that we share President Trump's message everywhere and adapt this White House to the new media landscape in 2025. To do this, I am excited to announce the following changes will be made to this historic James S. Brady briefing room, where Mr. Brady's legacy will endure. This White House believes strongly in the First Amendment, so it's why our team will work diligently to restore the press passes of the 440 journalists whose passes were wrongly revoked by the previous administration. We're also opening up this briefing room to new media voices who produce news-related content and whose outlet is not already represented by one of the seats in this room. We welcome independent journalists, podcasters, social media influencers, and content creators to apply for credentials to cover this White House. And you can apply now on our new website, whitehouse.gov/new media. Starting today, this seat in the front of the room, which is usually occupied by the press secretary's staff, will be called the new media seat. My team will review the applications and give credentials to new media applicants who meet our criteria and pass United States Secret Service requirements to enter the White House complex. So in light of these announcements, our first questions for today's briefing will go to these new media members whose outlets, despite being some of the most viewed news websites in the country, have not been given seats in this room.
It's amazing. Okay, let me just tell you how revolutionary this is. As somebody who spent, 20 years in the mainstream media, part of legacy media. In fact, I worked at CBS and at NBC News. I was a commentator on ABC News. I worked at Bloomberg. I've been there, done that. Fox too, okay? So let me just tell you, this is a big deal. Because it used to be you needed to work for a network in order to have a platform, right? Those days are gone, right? I'm here, you're here, we're all here, happy together. And this is not anything other than the Trish Regan channel, the Trish Regan show on the Trish Regan channel. So I don't have to go through the legacy media in order to reach you. This is totally brand new. And this is just something that obviously has been happening in the last few years. But you combine that together with now the White House saying, we welcome all of you. And we know they do, because they've been certainly good about giving access. They didn't really have the kind of access you might want to the legacy media, to be perfectly honest, or maybe they had access, but they were going to have their sound bites reinterpreted for them in ways that were not so pleasant. Unlike Kamala Harris, who, by the way, got the royal treatment by CBS News, to the point where Donald Trump's suing them for $10 billion because they would edit and re-edit things to make her seem great. Look, he's had it. He knows what that's about. So here he is inviting these very big players into the room, such as, well, Deadline reported on this, but I want to say Daily Wire, which gets tons. You know Ben Shapiro, right? I mean, he's got 7 million followers. We're teeny compared to Ben, by the way. Thank you for subscribing, sharing, liking. Smash those likes, as Don would tell you. Anyway, Ben's got 7 million followers on YouTube, and the website is a behemoth, and yet they couldn't get access to the White House briefing room. Apparently, that was just too special. They weren't allowed to ask questions. No, not at the White House briefing room or Post Millennial, which is a hugely popular site as well. Look at the reporters psyched. Oh my God, we're here. We're in the White House briefing room. This is unbelievable. And so I actually went to this website. You can apply for credentials, and that means, you then have access. They used to restrict this. I mean, it's really, really, really restricted, and they have some special front row, and only certain people get to sit in the front row. And then there's this whole jockeying for seats. They have the White House Correspondents Association, which you have to be part of, and so on and so on and so on. So this is revolutionary. He has just shaken things up in ways that, well, I guess we could anticipate, and perhaps even the mainstream media anticipated. Perhaps this is what scared the living daylights out of them. This is why they didn't want him to win. They kept saying, no, it can't happen, it can't happen, it can't happen. That basically he would be disastrous for society. I mean, they made some really, as you know, very, very bad comparisons to some of the biggest villains, if you would, in history. And I was like, why are they so out over their skis? I mean, I get it. They got nothing in the way of policy as far as Kamala or Joe are considered. There was nothing to run on. You didn't have personality. You didn't have an economy. You didn't have a safe country vis-a-vis the border, et cetera. You didn't have a quiet international situation. And you certainly didn't have the joy that she was going on and on and on about. So what did you run on? Oh, you ran on the other guy is bad. He's so bad that the world is going to end if you elect him. I mean, literally, that's what they were saying. The world was going to effectively end, as you know it, if you elected him. And what did people do? They elected him anyway. And so now he's getting a little bit of revenge. I wouldn't even call it revenge. You know what? It's just fairness. It's just transparency. This is the right thing to do. Podcasters, streamers, influencers should all have the ability to ask questions of the President of the United States and of the White House. They shouldn't be shut out like they got some kind of special problem. It's really, really remarkable to see. It's refreshing. It's where we're going, right? In society. This is what I talk about all the time. The transparency that you have, that we're here together. You can ask me questions in the live chat, and this is just going to get better and better and better. And I can respond to them. I don't have a script. I don't have to go through management saying, okay, Trish, you can say this and you can't say that. But by the way, you can say this, but we're going to fire you for it anyway, right? I'm thinking about March 2020 and a certain broadcaster I used to work for. All fine, right? Because the reality is, in some ways, I wish it had happened earlier, because the world has changed. The world has changed, and I now have the ability to speak directly to you. I have the ability to speak directly to the White House. I have the ability to speak to all of the players, quote unquote, in charge, right? All the important people. You don't have to work for a network anymore. And this is miraculous, but it also means that there's going to be much, much more change to come. And this is why when I talk about the networks really going down the tubes, and Brandon Carr over at the FCC making some changes, he has said, for example, in a letter to Bob Iger over at ABC, right? Disney owns ABC. Bob is the CEO of Disney. Brendan's like, no one has any faith in you guys. Nobody trusts you guys. And that means maybe we're not going to allow for these affiliates to be renewing their affiliations with you, ABC. See, it's a misnomer to think that all of those stations all across the country, your local stations, are controlled by ABC. They're not. ABC News and Disney only own about 7 of them. They had 7 O&Os the last time I checked, one of which I remember was in San Francisco. I know that because I worked for the CBS O&O there in San Francisco, right across the street. So they have these owned and operated stations, but everything else, somebody pays a licensing fee to ABC to be able to use their brand. But in order to do that, it means they have to come over the public airwaves, and that is something that the FCC has control over. So there's a lot of stuff that's changing, and it's all happening in real time. And you know what? It's exciting. All right? We're here together as this whole thing gets smashed in a good way that allows us to understand and know the truth. So I'm happy you're here. I hope you subscribe. Quick shout out for one of our sponsors. We have so much to get to today, including this Captain America stuff. Gold, right? Gold, I actually bought some more yesterday. It went up today. I try and buy it whenever it goes down on a little bit of a dip, because this is effectively my insurance in my own portfolio. It's an insurance against inflation. It's insurance against Armageddon. And hey, who doesn't need a little bit of insurance? It seems that the rest of the world feels that way too, because you've seen a lot of upside in gold, up some 30% and change just over the course of the last year. And then, of course, we're continuing to see this upside. A lot of people thinking it's going to $3,000 an ounce. I guess I hope so, and yet I don't hope so, right? Because at the same time, you're like, wait a second, if it's going there, we might have some bad things going on. I like gold because it helps me to sleep at night. In other words, I feel better about my portfolio and my diversification strategy, knowing that I have something like gold, and there's different ways to do this. This is certainly one of the ones I like the most, to afford for that diversification and allow you the ability to sleep well at night. You can get up to $15,000 right now in free silver with this special offer from American Hartford Gold if you go to trishlovesgold.com. You can't forget that, right? trishlovesgold.com. You can text Trish to 65532 today. Again, text Trish to 65532 today. Well, I'll tell you, Donald Trump's on a firing spree. The media is getting a lot of it. Jim Acosta, you're fired over at CNN. Or maybe it was kind of mutual, because you see, they were sending a message, kind of a humiliating message. They were putting him in what the Daily Mail called the Siberia of television news. That's one good way to put it. It's in part because, they kind of anticipated that there were going to be some fisticuffs coming up if they had Jim Acosta asking questions in that White House briefing room. Not that, he shouldn't be able to ask questions. Obviously, I'm all for that. But occasionally it used to get really, really disrespectful. You'll remember one of these very notorious moments.
But your campaign had an ad showing migrants climbing over walls and so on.
Well, that's true.
But
they weren't actors.
They're not going to be doing that.
They weren't actors. Well, no, it's true. Do you think they were actors? They weren't actors. They didn't come from Hollywood. Right. These were people. This was an actual, it happened a few days ago. And
they're hundreds of miles away, though. They're hundreds and hundreds of miles away. That's not an invasion.
Honestly, I think you should let me run the country. You run CNN.
All right.
And if you did it well, your ratings would be much better.
If I may ask one other question, Mr. President, if I may ask one other question, are you worried?
That's enough. That's enough.
Mr. President, I was going to ask one of the other folks.
That's enough.
Pardon me, ma'am. Mr. President,
that's enough.
Mr. President, I had one other question, if I may ask, on the Russia investigation. Are you concerned that you may have?
I'm not concerned about anything with the
Russian
investigation because it's a hoax. That's enough. Put down the mic.
Mr. President, are you worried about indictments coming down in this investigation?
Mr. President.
I'll tell you what, CNN should be ashamed of itself having you working for them. You are a rude, terrible person. You shouldn't be working for CNN. Go ahead.
I think that's unfair.
You're a very rude person. The way you treat Sarah Huckabee is horrible. And the way you treat other people are horrible.
Well, for the record, Jim Acosta's not working for CNN anymore. In fact, Jim Acosta may be one of those independents that they're going to bring in. They'll trot him out to the White House every now and then. And you know what? They'll actually let him in. Let's see if he'll be a little nicer this time. I doubt it. But anyway, Jim Acosta had his own agenda. And he was one of those, shall we say, that was like, oh my gosh, the sky is falling, the sky is falling. He cannot be elected again. And then when he was elected, just the other day, when it seemed very, very clear that the handwriting was on the wall for Jimmy and that he probably was going to have to leave, he pulled out this giant sign on set to remind everybody of how great he is. I mean, like, who keeps this sign that somebody sent him? You got to see it.
I want to take a moment to talk about something President Biden said during his farewell address. He warned the free press is crumbling in this country. I would add that's only if we, the people, let that happen. Journalists exist to seek the truth, to tell people's stories, to lift up voices that may not be heard otherwise, to shine a light on injustice, and to hold the powerful accountable. We are not the enemy of the people. We are the defenders of the people. Walter Cronkite once said, freedom of the press is not just important to democracy, it is democracy. I want to take a moment to show you something. A woman sent me this sign 8 years ago. She carried it here at a march in Washington. She wrote on the back of the sign, to me and the press here in D.C., you have our support. To Nora, wherever you are, right back at you. Reporting from Washington, I'm Jim Acosta.
You like the sign and everything? I mean, he was keeping it in his office for years. Well, Jim Acosta is done. By the way, you heard it here first. Did I not tell you last week or the week before? Gosh, how many days has Trump been in office? It seems like the days are getting longer, right? Because so much is happening. Anyway, Jim Acosta, he came out with that, oh my gosh, we have to stand for freedom. They had effectively just told him, buddy, you're moving to Siberia. Well, today he announced that it's over, right? He gave his big goodbye, his swan song, if you would. Guys, Jim Acosta is finished at CNN after 18 years, which is rather amazing. I did not know he was on the air there 18 years. I used to work with him at CBS. In fact, I took over his old office. I painted it red. In all seriousness, after he had left for Atlanta, that must have been it. So he was in Atlanta at the CBS bureau, and then he went to CNN. I wish him nothing but the best, but I suspect it was probably the right call for all parties involved. Here is his swan song.
Just wanted to end today's show by thanking all of the wonderful people who work behind the scenes at this network. You may have seen some reports about me and the show. And after giving all of this some careful consideration and weighing an alternative time slot CNN offered me, I've decided to move on. I am grateful to CNN for the nearly 18 years I've spent here doing the news. People often ask me if the highlight of my career at CNN was at the White House covering Donald Trump. Actually, no. That moment came here when I covered former President Barack Obama's trip to Cuba in 2016 and had the chance to question the dictator there, Raul Castro, about the island's political prisoners. As the son of a Cuban refugee, I took home this lesson. It is never a good time to bow down to a tyrant. I've always believed it's the job of the press to hold power to account. I've always tried to do that here at CNN, and I plan on doing all of that in the future. One final message. Don't give in to the lies. Don't give in to the fear. Hold on to the truth and to hope. Even if you have to get out your phone, record that message. I will not give in to the lies. I will not give in to the fear. Post it on your social media so people can hear from you too. I'll have more to say about my plans in the coming days, but until then, I want to thank all of you for tuning in. It has been an honor to be welcomed into your home for all these years. That's the news. Reporting from Washington, I'm Jim Acosta.
Wow. So he's clearly very impressed with himself. Steve Frischman, thank you for your support. Jim is no Walter Cronkite. Steve is writing, no, he's definitely not, but he's, I guess, trying to be. That's part of the problem, right? They're all fooling themselves. Constantly fooling themselves. And yes, peace of my mind. It's a true story. I did actually paint Jim's office red. It was a big deal because I got one with a window. I had been just across the hall and I had a yellow office. I had painted it yellow to kind of give me some cheer because there was no window in there. And then I got upgraded to Jim Acosta's office and I painted it red. Let that sink in, everyone. Let it sink in. It's good to have you here. Make sure you subscribe, share, like. We have so much to get to. But Jim Acosta is out, and Donald Trump is weighing in. Donald Trump has something to say on Jim Acosta's departure. He writes, wow, really good news. Jim Acosta, one of the worst and most dishonest reporters in journalist history and major sleazeback, has been relegated by CNN Fake News to the midnight hour, Death Valley, because of extraordinarily bad ratings and no talent. Word is he wants to quit, and that would be even better, Donald Trump writes. Jim is a major loser who will fail no matter where he ends up. Good luck, Jim. Ouch. Okay, so maybe he didn't really have to do that, but he can't help himself. He doesn't like the guy. And you know what? The guy doesn't really like him. And I'm just saying, like, sometimes, like, this goes both ways. I always have said to Trump over the years, you know, I'll be hard on you when it's necessary. But what's come about with so many members of the mainstream media is they're hard on him when it's not necessary. Like they go off on these tangents. Instead, for example, you remember when they were announcing the $500 billion AI program with the Oracle CEO just the other day, and Donald Trump's talking about this and the Japanese company, and nobody wanted to actually talk about that and the economy and investment. No. They just wanted to talk about J6 pardons. And so it's like, you know, it gets a little bit old after a while. They don't offer any respect his way, so consequently, no, he's not going to offer any respect their way. Like, that's just the reality of it. But think about what they've done. I mean, it just keeps getting worse and worse and worse. A new magazine cover actually proves how gross, how despicable, and how biased the mainstream media really is. This is from New York Magazine, and they issued this new issue they put out with a title called The Cruel Kids Table. And then they do this whole article about how there's all these young people that are super MAGA, and I guess they were with them on inauguration night, and they're trying to effectively insinuate that they're all white. So here's what you don't know. The real picture was edited. The real picture has certain people cropped out. This is the real picture. Take a look. And if you're listening on Apple Podcasts, thank you for that. On Spotify Podcasts, thank you for that. If you're watching live on YouTube, Rumble, we're happy to have you. You can see this. So there's obviously diversity in the crowd, but you wouldn't know that when you look at this, right? Because they don't want you to know that. They want you to think that these are a bunch of racist white kids who, you know, just want to suppress other groups. The magazine has gotten pretty slammed. I mean, people are calling it out. It's obviously a really bad thing to do. Here's the Daily Mail writing, New York Magazine slammed for a cropping photo to make MAGA look like a racist cult. New York Magazine has been slammed for editing black people out of a front cover spread on the young, gleeful, and casually cruel MAGA movement. I mean, like, if I'm one of these people and my photo was on there and they're calling me young and cruel, do I have the ability to sue them for that? Because that's kind of damaging. They put my name up there right next to or my face up there with the word cruel. I mean, if I'm these kids, I'm kids, adults, young adults, whatever. I'm not too happy about that. They may have some recourse. Anyway, just to further elaborate on what went down, there's a guy who actually sponsored the party who actually is black. Like, he hosted the party, all right? So, New York Magazine, you're kind of getting your facts a little bit messed up. And he's like, this is insane. He tweeted this out. Let me show you his tweet. This is Chris Barnard. And he's like, this is totally insane. New York Magazine literally cropped out all the black people out of this cover photo and then complained that the entire room is white. That was in the copy. I mean, do you guys have an agenda or do you have an agenda? It was really quite something. They talked about how all the white party goers were somehow maybe in this narrative of I don't know, really racist kind of cult. That's what they're trying to insinuate. The article's really rather remarkable. They talk about a lot of things, including how good looking the girls are. What is that about? Women in the conservative movement. Why do they tend to be so much better looking? I'd like to know. They said, without a doubt, they're just like all dropped and gorgeous. But the point just being, listen, guys, you cannot Photoshop a cover to try and push your own agenda. You wonder why people are so sick of this mainstream media. This is why it is critical and important that Donald Trump is opening it up to more people. Letitia James, she's coming out swinging against Donald Trump in a press conference just moments ago, saying this.
Not only does this administration's new policy put people at risk, but it is plainly unconstitutional. The president does not get to decide which laws to enforce and for whom. When Congress dedicates funding for a program, the president cannot pull that funding on a whim. Later today, I am leading and joining with my colleagues, my fellow Democratic attorney generals, in suing this administration to stop this illegal freeze of essential funds for our state. We will not stand for any illegal policy that puts essential services for millions of Americans at risk. And we work tirelessly overnight to ensure that that does not happen. Our lawsuit will seek a court order to immediately stop the enforcement of the OMB policy and to preserve essential funding for Americans.
All right, well, she got her way temporarily. A federal judge has just blocked the Trump administration's freeze on federal grants and loans. So this just came about within the last 24 hours. The White House put this freeze on federal grants and loans that basically would amount to trillions of dollars. They're trying to save money. Don't forget, that's what DOJ has been charged with. And they're like, okay, we want you to justify yourself. If you're some special program for DEI initiatives, you're going to have to justify, well, they got rid of DEI altogether. And so there's a lot of other programs in there, questions about whether student loans would be involved in this, et cetera. And so the OMB was going to say, all right, you're done. You're not going to get any money. So they've put a temporary block on that. Letitia was trying to get in the way of that because, of course, Letitia and her state, they count on all that extra money for all their ridiculous programs, all as she promises more trouble for Trump. She bragged about how she had sued him over 100 times in his last administration. She obviously had a big doozy with the nearly $500 million fine that she somehow managed to get the judge to level against him, because the judge and Letitia think that Mar-a-Lago is only worth $18 million, despite the fact that it makes like $56 million a year. Probably more now that he's president. Anyway, Letitia, remember, she was like, I'm not going to back down. No. I'm ready. I'm willing. I'm here.
Under my leadership, my office sued Donald Trump over 100 times. And the basis of all of that was Project 2025. So he cannot distance himself from something that he has attempted to implement when he was president of these United States. And we were successful 70% of the time. We were the firewall, Democratic attorney generals.
I just want to clarify something. So the Trump administration had actually said that people, including those that had student loans, they would not be affected by any of this. One of the things that came up in my head immediately was like, what does it mean for food stamps? And they're clarifying that it did not affect Medicare, Medicaid, Social Security, student loans, and food stamps. They also were defending the funding pause, saying that Trump was following through on his promise to turn Washington upside down if elected to the second term. So there was a lot of uncertainty, and that was leading way to a certain amount of panic. But he did say right from the very beginning it wasn't going to affect things like food stamps or Social Security or Medicare. Nonetheless, Letitia James, never one to shy away from a political opportunity, was using that for all it was worth. Meanwhile, I have a question. Is Letitia James now at risk because Donald Trump is making some really big moves as far as the Justice Department goes? The whole legal team there are getting cleaned out. You're fired, you're fired, you're fired, you're fired. Did you see this? Trump Justice Department says it fired employees involved in prosecutions of the president. So there were about 12 of them in total. They were all part of Jack Smith's team, and they are all done, right? Gone. Gonzo. Jack had enough good sense to leave before that, but he's just effectively ending the government careers, at least for now, of these prosecutors. And you understand why this is happening and probably why he has to do that. People are freaking out. He's been firing thousands, and they're like, how can he do this? I'm like, you know what a CEO does when they come in and they take over a company? They make sure that they have everybody on the same page. In other words, you either subscribe to that CEO's vision or you're out. It's just the way the world works. And the only place that doesn't work like that is Washington, D.C., because you seem to have a job just for life if you're a government employee. And Trump's coming in like a private sector employee, and he's like, nope, you know what? You don't buy into this. You don't buy into me. You don't buy into the MAGA movement. Then guess what? We don't need you here. And so all of this stuff now is starting to shift and is starting to change. He just got rid of all of the Jack Smith prosecutors. A big, big deal. Here's a congresswoman speaking about how great this is, and, you know, it needed to happen.
Republican Congresswoman Kat Cammack of Florida was in the last Congress, served on the Government Weaponization Subcommittee. So you are the perfect person to talk about this today. First of all, just your initial reaction that you're seeing already.
Well, it's incredible, honestly. This is long overdue. These are individuals who violated their oath of office, weaponized the justice system with the end goal being a political outcome, which was stop Trump. These individuals intimidated witnesses, they withheld evidence, and I think that their firing should just be the beginning. Honestly, if we're going to be back into a place where we are a nation of law and order and accountability, there need to be legal consequences for these individuals. That is something that the American people demanded in this election, and I think that this is a very good start, but we know how deep the weaponization of our federal government goes, and it's going to take a lot of work, and a lot of people are going to be held to account.
So a lot of people freak out when they hear that. They're like, wait a second, now you're going to go after them. But think about what they did to Donald Trump. And all I would point out is, like, you can't keep doing this, right? And so Trump needs to clean things up so that we're not weaponizing a system against people, because it's exactly what they did to him. And I'll tell you, this can flip and this can work, you know, for or against either side, right? So you've got to have a fair system where they're not saying, okay, because we don't agree with you politically, we're going to try and find something, anything we can to try and take you out. Think about all of those state cases. Think about what went down in Georgia. I mean, that was just a disaster, because Fani Willis was just a disaster, and, you know, her relationship was a disaster. And then it eventually, you know, just got tossed because they can't move forward because she's been disqualified because of the disaster that she is, shall we say. And now we're learning that, by the way, Garland may have had a hand in that he might have been communicating with the boyfriend down in Georgia, and that the boyfriend from Georgia, to the tune of what did taxpayers pay there? $700,000 to him, a lot of hours adding up. You know, Fani, she's a gray goose kind of girl, didn't she say? So not a cheap date. I don't know. Maybe he's a cheap date. Anyway, he's going up to Washington, D.C., and she's making sure he's paid for it. There's there. I mean, and that needs to be investigated, because she was with him before she hired him. Therefore, she hired her boyfriend. Therefore, there's some kind of exchange from a monetary standpoint that's going on there that was not disclosed. And so that has to be dealt with. That's one case. But then you get the Letitia James case, which just blows my mind, because, you know, business reporter I'm looking at it going, well, what does that mean for New York as a whole? I mean, who the heck wants to do business in New York if you're subject to some kind of crazy AG saying, well, I'm going to go after you because I think you're a political threat? I mean, that is messed up. And this is why I'm furious that the Court of Appeals has not thrown this thing out. Second Court of Appeals, the Court of Appeals for New York State. They've been dragging their feet, and they know exactly that this is way, 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 way too much and never, ever should have been brought. But they're dragging their feet. Jack Smith, he's done. Alvin Bragg, that didn't really, I guess it got the convicted felon. That's what they really wanted, right? That little label. These idiots who brought these cases, they actually all could be in jeopardy now, because all of them are doing really weird things. Like Letitia James, for example, who's issuing this challenge, not just on the federal funds, but on the immigration front. And I'm just going to tell you, Letitia, if there's one thing that the federal government has control over, you can go to the Commerce Clause, you can go to Section 8. I will tell you this, we have control as a nation over who comes in to our country. Our border is controlled by us. Therefore, it is absolutely within the jurisdiction of the U.S. federal government to be going after these criminals that are in the country. Incidentally, you know who had some really, really strong words to say about that? None other than the new press secretary for the United States of America, for the White House. Caroline Leavitt today said, listen, they're criminals. They're criminals just because they're in the country. So it doesn't even matter. Like, we can deport them if they're here illegally. That in and of itself is a crime. So Letitia's trying to push back against that. So is the AG out in California. And I have news for them. They're going to find themselves in a whole bunch of trouble. Quick shout out to my financial firm, 76 Research. So you've been watching the market this week. Deep seek, right? It's become a verb because apparently the Chinese have figured out a cheaper mousetrap on AI. I don't know as I entirely buy it. We just put a report out about this last night, which I think you will find very, very interesting. Go to 76 Report or 76research.com. Use code word dollar. Sign up. You can get our research there, or look at those model portfolios, because we have 3 different model portfolios that really help you invest in this new MAGA movement and this new economy. We have American Resilience. We have an income builder portfolio. We have an inflation protection portfolio. I really encourage you to do that. But Rob and I put out a piece just last night that basically looked at what was going on with Deep Six and what it meant for technology. And Donald Trump had the right answers on this. He's like, look, you know what? If it makes us more competitive, all the better. I'm just going to say this. Don't you think it's a little bit weird that China comes out with this? Like, just 48 hours after, for goodness sakes, 48 hours after we announced this huge investment, $500 million, billion dollars, forgive me, $500 billion, all in AI. I mean, with Larry Ellison and the Japanese, let me tell you, the Chinese are up to something. It was like, people were like, oh, it's their Sputnik moment. Are they trying to prove like they can do this so much better? But Trump had a good reaction. It's like, okay, if you can do it better, guess what? It's just better for us because we have the investment, we have the people, we have the engineers, and we have the companies that are doing this. So I would just say, look, the market freaked out, but ultimately what you want to bet on are really good companies for the long run. Oh, Leslie, you are super generous. Thank you so much. I just want to give, Leslie was one of our very, very first people here on this channel. So she and I have a special relationship. She's advising Letitia to get a hobby or some therapy or something. Leslie, the problem is, Leslie Kimbrell, everyone, the problem is this is all Letitia has, right? The only reason we're even talking about her, the only reason you or I even know her name is because she's out there going on and on and on about Trump all the time. That's her only reason for existence. It's her only reason for being. Go back to all those campaign tapes that she was like, I'm going to go get Trump. I'm going to get Trump. I'm your answer to getting Trump. I have steel in my backbone or whatever. I mean, so, I agree with you. She needs to get a hobby. She needs to retire. She needs some therapy, but she's not going to do any of it because she's just thinking about her next political move. And I wouldn't be surprised if the woman, believe it or not, has presidential ambitions, which is terrifying. But this is why she's saying stuff like that.
Under my leadership, my office sued Donald Trump over 100 times. And the basis of all of that was Project 2025. So he cannot distance himself from something that he has attempted to implement when he was president of these United States. And
okay, but you know what? Whatever. Project 2025. It's actually pretty good. It's actually really good. And there's a lot of smart people that were involved in it, I'm just going to say, but like everybody was freaking out about that. Some of my friends over at Heritage had a hand in that. It was all Heritage and it's great. Like you can go to Project 2025. We've talked about that. They're not like mysterious. They're very proud of their work. And a lot of really smart people, including ones with a real heavy familiarity with the Constitution, constitutional law scholar types, were putting a lot of effort into figuring out what could and couldn't be done as Donald Trump was coming back into office, because they wanted to be ready, right? Like you want to be ready. You don't want to sit there and have to finagle and hope and pray that this or that happens, because then you're not on offense, you're on defense. And that's what they did last time around. And we can't have that, because then we're going to be in a Russia situation all over again. All over again. A piece of my mind looking at the whole DeepSeek AI thing. It's from China. Do you think DeepSeek is going to be something that you would download on your phone? I just asked you guys a question, because I'm telling you right now, there's no way I would be downloading a Chinese AI app, like the equivalent of ChatGPT. ChatGPT freaks me out enough, right? Like your innermost thoughts, okay, I'm worried about this, I'm worried about that. If you have a health question, whatever, and you go to ChatGPT, they know everything about you. Think about what somebody could do with that data and information. If you thought TikTok was bad, peace of my mind, just imagine what it becomes if it's a version of ChatGPT and it's from China. It's some kind of giant spying operation. But, whether or not their technology is that good, I haven't vetted it because I'm not willing to download the darn thing. But some people say it's good. Others are kind of like, who knows? Don't forget, there were reporters like the Bloomberg reporter and the Wired reporter. They all put this out. I would just point out something really interesting. And Rob and I talked about this in the note last night at 76 Research. DeepSeek, I keep wanting to say DeepSeek, but DeepSeek has been around for a while. Like people knew about it back in early December. In fact, I think one of the big Bloomberg articles was actually back in early December. So why did it all of a sudden become a thing on Saturday and Sunday of last weekend? Other than the Chinese were trying to fire back against our big investment into AI. I'm just saying. Think about the timing of it and think about how they need to fight back against Trump. And they need to do it in this new kind of way. And what is it that resonates with Donald Trump? Money, business. Those are the things that he really cares about. So I just have a lot of questions still. And it was not a reason for me to say, okay, I'm going to sell all technology right now because, look, I'm in it for the long haul. If you're retiring next year, I get it. That's why we have the income builder portfolio, not to talk about markets too much. I want to get to other stories today, but that's why we have the income builder portfolio. And I do encourage you guys to go take a look there, 76research.com at all of those model portfolios. But there's different sort of scales. One is for growth. And so it's going to be more tech heavy, the American Resilience portfolio. One is going to be more for income building. It's called the income builder portfolio. Oh, really quick, before we get to Captain America, because Captain America is suddenly really not about America. Balance of Nature. I've been taking this, I want to say for the last year. They came to the show and they wanted to sponsor it. So we thank them for that because they helped me bring you this show for free every day. And I was like, wow, this would be good because I haven't taken vitamins since I was a kid and I took my Flintstone every morning. My mom would give it to me with breakfast. So I got the Balance of Nature vitamins, fruits and veggies, and I started to, and I actually feel great. Like I have not, knock on wood, been sick. I talk about this a lot because I have 3 kids and they're like, one of them, it's like a game of whack-a-mole. Like one of them's always sick, always has a cold, always has a flu, strep throat, you name it. And it's like, mom has to go on and do her show every day. I can't do that if I'm sick. Like that would not be good. I really, really don't want to get sick. And I actually think that taking my fruits and veggies has helped a lot. And I'm not alone in this. By the way, there's thousands of testimonials. You can see it on their site at balanceofnature.com. I mean, you've got my testimonial. You've got Leslie, who was just, we just had her on the chat. Leslie has been taking it. So, and my kid's music teacher has been taking it too. You can call them at 1-800-246-8751, 1-800-246-8751. Use discount code TRISH, TRISH. It helps the show. It helps me and you're helping yourself. So check that out. So guys, any Captain America fans here? Do you watch the Captain America franchise? Because Captain America is so woke that apparently he's no longer about America. I'm like, you're Captain America. Like it's in your name. Like the whole thing originated, the storyline back in the 1940s, and it comes out of World War II, but this Anthony Mackie, who's taking over for the other guy, and he's like the new Captain America. He had some rather perverse things to say at a PR event in Rome, Italy. This happened within the last 24 hours, and it's going viral. And I'm sure Disney's like, oh my gosh, because Disney, man, their stock is really getting kind of trashed as it is. And now they've got to deal with this. And maybe people boycotting. I'm like, I'm not going to see it. I'm not going to give them my money. Are you kidding me? Between Snow White and this? Nope, sorry, Anthony, you ruined it. It's Captain America, for God's sakes. Here, watch.
For me, Captain America represents a lot of different things, and I don't think the term, America should be one of those representations. Like, it's about a man who keeps his word, who has honor, dignity, and integrity. Someone who is trustworthy and dependable. It's kind of, this is kind of like an aspect of a dream coming true. When I was a kid, all of us as actors, I believe, want to get back to that day before someone told you no. When you look out your door and you see a 5-year-old kid with a stick and he's slaying dragons to save the princess in the tower, that kid really believes there are dragons out there. That stick is really a sword and he's really trying to save that princess. And then one day somebody told him, no, there are no dragons, that's not a sword, and that princess is not there. And all of his little dreams were dashed. So, as an actor, I feel like our job is to get back to the day where we see that dragon and we slay that dragon to save that princess. And that's kind of what this movie was for me.
Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. Wow. David Lorenzo, thank you. I love that you love the show, and I love that you're always here. One of our favorites here on the channel. David Lorenzo, thank you so much for your generosity. I appreciate that. But oh my goodness. Like Captain America, you're like Mr. America, okay? Like what's going on? Right? What happened? Like you lost me. I really don't think I can go see your movie because Captain America is all about the resilience and the greatness of America. It's all about believing in something that's true. It's about morality. Captain America is like basically the icon for the whole Marvel universe, right? Mr. Moral, because he's Captain America. And don't forget, like this came out of the 1940s. What do you think was going on in the 40s? World War II. The whole damn world would be speaking German today if it weren't for the Captain Americas of this great country that came forward and fought for what was right. So Anthony Mackie, the new face of Captain America, you should really be ashamed of yourself. It's disgusting what you just said. And I would expect a huge apology. You know what? Disney's probably going to expect one too, because look at where the stock is trading. They're struggling. I mean, today was a better day in the markets, and yet you got Disney trading down. This is from before the market closed, trading down because, this guy single-handedly really kind of screwed things up for them now, didn't they? I mean, this is pretty bad. To say that it doesn't embody American values because, it actually is supposed to be about truth and goodness and all these things. For goodness sakes, we're in a really, really bad place when we no longer believe in ourselves. And this is exactly what they have tried to do. He's one of the most iconic characters in the entire Marvel universe, okay? Created in 1941 during World War II. His story, obviously it's evolved over the decades, but he's this guy who's like really fragile. His name is Steve Rogers, right? He's this young man from Brooklyn, but he's deeply patriotic despite how fragile he is. And he wants to serve his country during World War II, but his physical limitations are preventing him from being in the military. And so he becomes part of this super soldier program and takes a super soldier serum. I'm just giving you the backstory on the comic. And it transforms him into this really strong and super resilient, amazingly fast soldier. And he becomes Captain America. And just to point out something that's kind of part of the obvious, he's got the shield, right? Like with the American flag on it. He is Captain America. But you get these people right now with their woke ideology that just hate America, that don't want to sing the national anthem, that think America is the entire problem with the world. And I'm just going to say, you keep going down that path, guess what? Conservatives, they're not going to watch your movie. They're really not. They're already basically a little skeptical of y'all because Disney literally assembled the Avengers cast. Remember this back in late October, Kamala was running for president and they're like, oh my gosh, Trump might win. So we need the Avengers.
Hi, Avengers.
Hi.
Thanks
Hey,
for
Scarlett.
jumping on the call.
Whoa. I think you mean assembling. I said assembling. Don, that's pretty good. No, they thought it was funny.
Scarlett, it is our pleasure to come together and to get the vote out this election. Come on.
Yeah, how can we be of service?
Well, how about we start with what our voting plans are going to be, who we're going to bring to the polls with us, that sort of thing.
I think Kamala Harris needs a catchphrase.
Ooh, yes, definitely a catchphrase.
How about this? I'm just off the top of my head. I can do this all day.
Shut up. I hate it.
Okay.
I mean, it's original, but
What about something punchier like, ooh, boom. You looking for this? Iron Man 2, everybody loved it.
okay, again, I think we're just trying to get out the vote.
Kamala forever.
That's better.
Okay, how about I'm down with democracy? It's just clean, it's simple.
Okay, I like that.
It's hard to argue with that.
Kamala Harris down with democracy.
Oh, yeah. I'm Kamala Harris, and I say down with democracy.
I don't know if that sounds the way we want it to sound, though.
I think we just need, can we get some production though?
Jarvis?
My name's not Jarvis, but whatever.
Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. So yeah, now we know where the Avengers stand. Now we know where Disney stands. Now we know they've managed to yet again ruin a really great story. Like, you know what? Like this DEI stuff, guys, come on, enough already. All right, enough already. It's partly why I started 76 Research. Use code word dollar. Don't forget American Hartford Gold. Go to trishlovesgold.com today so that you can get access to the $15,000 worth of free silver. Not bad, right? Special offer if you text Trish to 65532 or sign up at trishlovesgold.com. Again, they're offering up to $15,000 worth of free silver, and gold is one of those things I like. Actually, both of us, Rob and I together, like at 76 Research. It's something that we include in the inflation protection portfolio, and also it may be in part of the income builder. But anyway, we do like gold because it's seen as something that can help even out some of those fluctuations. And full disclosure, I did buy some more just yesterday. Anyway, you know, because Captain America isn't around. What's going to happen? I'll tell you who's the new Captain America. It's Donald Trump. Donald Trump is now single-handedly doing everything he can to save America. That's why people put him in there, and it's really amazing to see. And I just got to tell you, as a podcaster myself, as a streamer who streams live every single day, I love what's happening. I love that we're getting this breakup of the big networks. And we're actually getting at truth, because you know what? Truth matters. Truth is real. And we need that in a moment in time like this. Thank you. You guys are real. You guys are here every day. I love you for it. Make sure you subscribe if you're just coming to me for the first time. Do your part, share, like, do all that. Get everybody over here. We're building. 550,000 strong now. Who would have thought? I mean, that's 50,000 in the last month, guys. Like no advertising, nothing. That is literally just me here every day with you and you guys spreading the word. So thank you for what you're doing, helping to make this country great again. You know it's happening. Thank you. I'll see you back here tomorrow.